to get that little bit more speed control to his advantage.
Speed control is exactly what you need. We don't have any kind of tailwind here. All right then, trainers, are you ready for our second top 8 game here at the Birmingham Regional Championships? Landorus and Rillaboom facing off against Fluttermane and Incineroar.
And immediately, both of these trainers are trying to offer their own little bit of supportive options. Now, Markus with the booster energy Fluttermane, it doesn't have the ability to protect itself, which is absolutely fine in most situations, but one of the things that you do have to be worried about is moves like Wood Hammer on this Rillaboom. Now, it can get some Icy Wind support. It can slow down the pace of the Landorus and the Rillaboom, maybe even allowing this Incineroar to go for a Flare Blitz into it and to be able to knock it out, but it does still have to worry about Landorus. The downside of booster speed on the Fluttermane is that it's usually pretty weak in its special attack overall, and an Icy Wind definitely doesn't KO a Landorus without a little bit of help.
Well, even though Landorus takes double super effective damage being a ground and flying type, this turn the Landorus is just going to be scanning out and protecting, and of course from all of that damage, the Icy Wind now super effective onto Stefano's Rillaboom. The speed dropped, but of course Grass Glide a priority move. Now the Incineroar parting shot, reducing the offensive prowess of this Rillaboom, and it's going to be able to scuttle to the back for Markus, and Markus can switch something in its stead.
So if this Rillaboom has gone on the offensive in the direction of the Fluttermane, not only is it not going to be able to KO, but it's also effectively powering up, if that's the way to describe it, the pain split on that set.
Absolutely, the pain split, which of course, as you say, will be averaging out the HP between the Fluttermane and indeed the Rillaboom. So here comes the Urshifu, just in the face of a U-turn that Stefano is going to use to reposition that Rillaboom in favor of another piece that he can switch in from the back.
Okay, so if this is Incineroar, then the fake-out pressure is going to maintain itself on the field. This is what this Incineroar-Rillaboom combination is so prevalent at being able to do. But Stefano's got to be really careful here because that Landorus, having just protected itself, is under threat of an Icy Wind and a Surging Strikes from the Urshifu that Markus has positioned in front of it. And so Stefano's got to think really long and hard about how he's able to position his Pokemon such that that Landorus can actually get any value onto the field.
Incineroar, though, is going to be good for reducing the attack of this Urshifu. Of course, it doesn't matter when it comes to the Surging Strikes move. We'll still just be getting the critical hits through that drop.
Okay, so Incineroar with a fake out, making sure that the Landorus can maybe get something going this turn. But Stefano's kind of struggling, seems to be having an uphill battle here. And Markus is just carrying on, making sure that that pressure is in his favor rather than on Stefano's. And I think this is a real testament to how this balanced composition really likes to play. Put all of your pieces in the right spot at the right time, and it's very difficult to take down.
It's going to be Stefano now taking the time to decide what to lock into in this situation. Of course, you've got Landorus that it is also threatened by these Surging Strikes and by this Icy Wind, but you can always go for the Terastallization. Urshifu, though, is going to be retreating, and coming in will be Rillaboom instead, providing an active Fake Out heading into the next turn. And now it's time to Terastallize as well. One of these Pokemon is going to be completely flipping the type chart. It's going to be the Landorus for Stefano. Unsurprising in this situation, now it can take those Icy Winds so much better. The Terra Poison, of course, meaning is also resisting those Fairy-type moves. Now, what was the move of choice after this Incineroar fakes out Markus' freshly switched in Rillaboom? It is indeed the Icy Wind. Landorus won't be moving quite as speedily, but it takes that damage all the better now, as the speed is reduced for Incineroar, the speed is reduced for Landorus. Earth Power into the freshly swapped in Rillaboom. Really nice switch for Markus there. Of course, resisted damage.
Markus just not allowing any of his pieces to really be under too much threat. And now the Terra Poison has come out on the Landorus. That's actually likely to be able to take a Surging Strikes from the Urshifu unless this Landorus takes a little bit more damage. The Mystic Mortar makes it a little bit closer to the edge than it would otherwise be if it was carrying something like a Choice Scarf instead. But actually, the Terra Poison on the Landorus overall is pretty high value, especially when that's powering up the Sludge Bomb that it has access to as well. So Rillaboom here, switching in, doesn't like to be able to have to take all of those attacks. And even though Stefano is in a really offensively pressuring spot right now, seeing the opportunity to get that Landorus out of there, out of the way of any danger, is really going to be impactful for him.
Markus is able to get a taunt off onto Stefano's Incineroar. It won't be able to go for parting shot now. High horsepower would have been super effective. It's not very effective into Rillaboom, but all this damage stacks up, especially when critical hits come in.
Oh, Flare Blitz!
Flare Blitz, though, now into the Flutter Mane. Going to take it down to about 50%. As you say, Ben, one of these more supportive Flutter Manes is able to take that damage really pretty well, and a little bit of recovery from the grassy terrain all around.
Such a clever taunt as well from Markus. It didn't work out well for him. Stefano saw through the opportunity for Markus to go for a taunt there, stop a parting shot, stop the Incineroar being able to pivot itself off. But Stefano's kind of shifted gears a little bit in the mid-game here, trying to target down that Flutter Mane so the Landorus in the back has a little bit more room to breathe, can start dishing out the damage to these really strong Pokemon. But there's the Pain Split. That's going to allow the Flutter Mane to live another Flare Blitz.
It can become a Pokemon that just doesn't go down, but Incineroar's going to hang on with the 1 HP here. The Wood Hammer boosted by the Grassy Terrain. That is going to be enough to secure the KO, so the Pain Split not quite paying the dividends it would have liked it to. Rillaboom's going to take a hefty chunk of recoil damage there. It's down to below just 50% of its HP. The Flare Blitz again now into Markus's Rillaboom.
Wow!
Super effective hit. And now Markus, all of a sudden, on the turn of a sixpence, down to just the final 2 Pokemon.
The Grassy Terrain recovery on both the Incineroar and the Flutter Mane, increasing the damage that the Incineroar went to after that parting shot, was what allowed the Incineroar to hang on there after the high horsepower. So you can see how fine the margins are with training of these 2 players. And that's another application of Pain Split, because it's not dependent on the type chart whatsoever, that you can say, well, hey, my opponent's Pokemon's got lots of HP, let me nab some of that, so it puts it in range of another attack.
This Raging Bolt, though, is an issue, and it's a big issue for Markus. How do you have the damage to be able to get rid of it, especially when you have a Thunderclap online in the face of something that would take super effective damage like this Urshifu?
It's going to be tough, but the Markus has not yet used their terrestrialization, and so the Urshifu doesn't necessarily get one-hit KO'd by either the Thunderclap, nor, in fact, I'm just going to check myself here, because actually this, yes, it's Terra Steel on the Urshifu on Markus's side. Yeah, so not going to be knocked out by the Raging Bolt, nor the Rillaboom Wood Hammer, but that does make itself susceptible to a high horsepower from the Rillaboom. Fortunately, Stefano isn't running that set, so yeah, there's it's a nice opportunity for Markus to just go for their terrestrialization a little bit later on while this Raging Bolt is setting up.
The Thunderclap, because Urshifu is indeed attacking, and that's actually just enough for the big one-hit KO now. It's just going to be the Incineroar against the world, against 3 of Stefano's Pokemon. And wow, Stefano has turned this around oh so quickly, just like in that previous game where Hengwei Zhang bettered Marco Silva. Could it be the underdog, the David beating Goliath once more?
Certainly, like, and especially looking back at the early turns, Markus looked like he was in control all the way through, but the combination of switching allowed the room for Stefano to find a route through that game, getting a little bit of chip damage onto the Flutter Mane so that it could be finished off by a Wood Hammer. Then the Rillaboom not being able to KO the Incineroar, that's going to allowed the Flare Blitz to go down into the Rillaboom. Now, if the high horsepower was able to knock out the Incineroar on that turn, then we're probably looking at a little bit of a different game. But without the Flutter Mane, it's hard to imagine how that Raging Bolt goes down.
Exactly that, and that's going to have something that Markus has to prioritize heading into this next game, just working out where the damage onto the Raging Bolt comes from. And Flutter Mane is obviously going to be a key piece there, so maybe it's something Markus wants to keep in the back, ready to go against Stefano's Raging Bolt, should that be lurking in the back as well.
One of the good things and bad things about this sort of balanced composition that Markus is running is that Raging Bolt, as a mirror Pokemon, as a Pokemon that you see across from you while you're running your own Raging Bolt, can be quite deadly, because Raging Bolts can knock each other out with their respective Dragon-type moves. But also, if you look at the rest of Markus's team, Urshifu, Water-type damage predominantly, Incineroar Fire-type damage, Ogerpon Grass and Water, and Rillaboom just Grass. All of those types are resisted by the Raging Bolt's Dragon types, and so you've got to really, as you said, Charlie, hold on to those resources that matter the most to make sure that you have enough in the end game to be able to deal with Raging Bolt.
Well, Stefano claimed that game, but it seemed like it could go either way. There was just that big turn of a double KO onto Markus's Pokemon. Can Stefano do it again? Will Stefano seal this here and now, or will Markus take us to a game 3? Landorus and Rillaboom hitting the field for Stefano, and a big switch for Markus here, and I mean big, in that Raging Bolt alongside Fluttermane.
This Raging Bolt on Markus's side is a Terra Electric, so it does have the Life Orb rather than a booster energy, which is of course on that Fluttermane, and that's going to mean it can switch out and switch back in without losing any boost from the Protosynthesis that other Raging Bolts, certainly Stefano's, would have to think about maintaining. But what that does mean is that Raging Bolt on Markus's side is very susceptible to just being targeted down by big ground type damage, and Markus has got to be really careful of that, how he positions, or equally how he plays aggressively to try and take advantage of Stefano calling a switch.
Yeah, well, aggressively is exactly what Stefano wants to do to Markus here, given the Raging Bolt is on the field. It's so threatening. Markus is bringing this down to the wire, but locks in the time, so Landorus is going to be protecting here. It's not going to be taking any damage this turn. Icy Wind connecting into, hopefully, the Rillaboom here. It does have a 5% chance to miss, but reducing its speed crucially, as well as dealing respectable, super effective damage now. What has Markus gone for with the Raging Bolt? Draco Meteor attempted into the Landorus, but of course, the Protect.
And Rillaboom just takes a little bit of damage, but it does get an opportunity to get this Wood Hammer off.
Oh, but the 9
Fluttermane.
HP survival, and this is exactly the position Fluttermane wants to be in order to go for that Pain Split move. It means that Fluttermane will be healed all the more, whereas Stefano's Pokemon will be brought down so low.
There's no priority blocking, though, on Markus's side, so having that Fluttermane so low is great for the ability to Pain Split later, but for now, it's under threat of being knocked out by a Grassy Glide. The combination of a Grassy Glide knocking out the Fluttermane plus an Earth Power into that Raging Bolt would probably be enough, because it's a Life Orb set on the Raging Bolt, not likely to be as bulky, to knock it out on this turn. So Markus, in Game 2, a game down, making a big swing, but not quite getting the benefit of it.
But could they get the benefit from this turn, as Raging Bolt is going to retreat to safety, and Markus switching in instead this Incineroar, dropping the attack stat crucially of this Rillaboom. Does it mean that a Grassy Glide wouldn't KO? I think it probably still would.
With a Terra, maybe.
We'll see, perhaps, yeah, the Terrestrialization coming out as well. Markus seems to be going all in on this turn. It will be that Fluttermane. He's going for his Terra Grass. He's going to be resisting the Grassy Glide here. And if Fluttermane can just get off this Pain Split, it means that Markus could be back in the driver's seat. Wow, trainers, it all comes down to this Grassy Glide. It's going to be enough to secure the KO, even with the Intimidate, even with the resisted hit. Markus went all in that turn, and unfortunately, it just was not enough.
And that was the best play, I think, that Markus could have really tried to get an Icy Wind down onto that Landorus, but it is the Earth Power that this Incineroar has to take down. Game 1 and Game 2, Stefano managing to pick up a double KO in the mid-game and be able to form an endgame with all of the Pokemon remaining. Now, this time round, there was a lot less switching involved, but the effect is the same. Stefano has all of their resources to bear, as Markus is down to just the Ogerpon and the Raging Bolt.
You can't Terrestrialize this Raging Bolt anymore to get out of your ground-type weakness to the Landorus. My goodness gracious me, Markus has been given, really kind of schooled in this situation by Stefano. Another newcomer or newer player to the scene, still one with fantastic results behind them, but searching for that first big win. And just like Hengwei Zhang against Marco Silva that we just saw in our first top 8 game that we streamed, it could be the underdog, the David beating Goliath. And of course another Italian, when so far in our 2026 season it's been all Italians claiming regional titles. This time, Rillaboom going to be switching out
into Incineroar and getting some Intimidate down onto that half-flame Ogerpon, maintaining that fake-out pressure for later, both in the Incineroar that switched in, but that Rillaboom in the back that can switch in later.
Okay, the Swords Dance now on the Ogerpon, mitigating that Intimidate, and in fact, bringing this Ogerpon to +1, but could it be enough in the face of this Slowpoke, which is just enough, super effective for another one-hit KO. The new guard certainly seems to be reversing the old guard right now. Raging Bolt attempting this Thunderbolt into the Incineroar. It does bring it down to about half, but again, it's going to be Raging Bolt against all 4 of Stefano's Pokemon.
That is a really, really incredible play. Stefano, realizing that the Swords Dance was the only way for Markus to get back in, calls it out, gets the sludge bomb, and takes himself into top 4.